Today's episode in an environment where people can express themselves and they can truly get better. We can create a culture of safety, empathy, compassion. I am sharing with you from over 25 years of working with people who have suffered from serious mental illness, with anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, people that have thought about giving up, suffer from hopelessness, feelings of helplessness, people who are emotionally and psychologically exhausted. And that's why I want to talk to you today about how it can be so difficult for a person who is suffering emotionally to have the right words, the right vocabulary to share their pain. They're not able to say, I'm feeling emotional pain, but they're talking about how their bodies feel. That could be another indication of emotional pain. Welcome to Illuminate Psychology with Dr. Rolla, where we delve into the world of mental health and wellness with warmth, empathy, and understanding. In this space, we explore the stories we carry, the wounds that we often hide, and we shine the light on the path to healing and wholeness. Today's episode is about the pain behind suicidal thoughts and suicide. I'm going to talk about how difficult it is for a person who is suffering emotionally to express it in words. We will talk about how the body is impacted by emotional pain. Also, some of the erroneous thinking about emotional pain. How people of faith can sometimes talk about emotional pain in religious language that may be confusing and difficult to decipher. I'm going to talk to somebody or someone who knows someone who is suffering emotionally and has suffered from suicidal thoughts or even attempted suicide. We are going to take the shame away from emotional pain and hopefully begin to look through the lenses of compassion and understanding. I believe that when we better understand emotional pain that a person who has suicidal thoughts is suffering from, we will handle them better. We will speak words that are empathetic, that brings about healing. We will create an environment where people can express themselves and they can truly get better. We can create a culture of safety, empathy, compassion. I am sharing with you from over 25 years of working with people who have suffered from serious mental illness, with anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, people that have thought about giving up, suffered from hopelessness, feelings of helplessness, people who are emotionally and psychologically exhausted. And that's why I want to talk to you today about how it can be so difficult for a person who is suffering emotionally to have the right words, the right vocabulary to share their pain. In my experience of working with hundreds of patients, the emotional weariness, the weight of the pain makes it difficult to really coherently share the depth of it. They'll tell me a story here, a story there, but if you're not patient and you don't have experience with this kind of work, you might say, is that all that you're going through, that you're troubled about? What I have found is that when a person is suffering emotionally, they share the story in bits and pieces, and it can take a while to put it together. One of my patients who I've been working with now for the past year shared trauma from her older teen years and young adulthood only in the last few sessions. And I had done a thorough interview with her. Somehow she never shared it. For someone who is untrained, they may say, oh, she's lying or she's covering it up. No, that's not what's happening. She's finally in a place where she's able to access that pain and put words to it. We had been talking about other aspects of her emotional pain, but I was surprised to find out this part that she shared with me in the last few sessions. And I said to her, this is information that you have not shared with me before. And she said something like, Dr. Rolla, I forgot. I didn't even think about it. And I went to a different level of empathy for what she's going through now with her medical issues because of what happened in her young adulthood that I did not know about, even with a thorough interview. Many people suffer emotional pain will not use words, but they're nonverbal cues that can be easily missed, such as poor eye contact, difficulty with concentrating, a blunted affect is just bland, a neutral affect. They may look very rigid in posture, or their speech can be monotone, unspontaneous. Because of my training, I'm able to see those nonverbal cues and come to some understanding of the depth of the emotional pain. For many of you that live or knows somebody who is suffering emotional pain, you might actually get used to them being that way and not understand that those are nonverbal signs of the emotional suffering. So you will say to me, Dr. Rolla, if they're not using their words, so what can I do? Or if I'm not using my words, how are they gonna know? We have to pay attention to shifts in moods. Somebody typically interested in socializing, not wanting to socialize anymore, or somebody that is interested in politics now shows no expression when you talk about it. They have no interest because of the emotional exhaustion. Another area that we need to think about when with this whole issue of not having the right words to help us to better understand the depth of the pain behind suicidal thoughts is that many people will use language talking about their body. I'm feeling tired. I'm overwhelmed. I'm just fed up. They're not able to say, I'm feeling emotional pain, but they're talking about how their bodies feel. That could be another indication of emotional pain. The bottom line here is this. The fact that we don't know the depth of the pain does not mean that it is not there. And we have to approach people who are suffering emotionally with a sense of curiosity. I approach people that I work with a sense of humility. Even though I've been doing this for a long time, I want to know this person well enough to better understand what they've been through. I never assume that I know it all because of the work that I've done. I'm paying attention to what they tell me about their history, their perception about what they've been through. I'm paying attention to their body language. Some of my patients, I've noticed, they will ask me to repeat what I said several times, even though they're looking at me. That's a sign of emotional pain. And I can look through their eyes and see, oh my God, they just look empty. I'm judging and assessing the emotional pain even though they're not ready to use words yet. I'm not going to diminish the emotional pain because they don't have the right words. Now let's talk about what is happening on a brain level. When a person is suffering emotionally, they may have depression, anxiety, PTSD. The body perceives it as a stressor. When the body perceives a stressor, the stress response system is activated. The HPA axis, the hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and the adrenal axis, HPA. The hypothalamus releases a hormone that signals to the pituitary gland to send a message to the adrenal gland to produce cortisol. The pituitary gland releases a hormone, ACTH, that travels to the adrenal gland, and the adrenal glands are on top of your kidneys. And that adrenal gland produces cortisol as a response to the stressor. The problem with emotional pain is that the stressor does not have a beginning and an end. It tends to be ongoing. Therefore, the person who is suffering emotionally has their HPA axis overstimulated. The immune system is suppressed. Glucose is released in the body. Their mood is affected because they're in hyper alert mode. It can be difficult to concentrate, and cognitive functioning and short-term memory can be impacted. I hope this shows you that we need to be careful to stop minimizing the pain behind suicidal thoughts and suicide, because on a brain level, physiologically, we can have trouble. There's an overproduction of cortisol. This is why many people who suffer emotionally have a high rate of, significant rate of cardiovascular disease and diabetes. The hyperstimulation of the HPA axis, which is the stress response syndrome of the body, stress response system of the body, causes there to even be resistance to insulin, which makes them more vulnerable to developing type 2 diabetes. This is not a science class, but I feel this is important to share this with you. Again, to help us to develop a new level of empathy and compassion for the person who is suffering emotionally. We have the brain, what's happened physiologically. We have the challenge with being able to use the right vocabulary. We also have this layer. This layer is when people are jumping to conclusions about the person who is suffering emotionally. This is when people assume that the person suffering emotionally is not strong enough. I often hear people say, if they had enough faith, they won't be suffering. That other person went through the same thing. What's the big deal? Not so much what's the big deal, why can't they work through it? Why do they need to see a therapist? Another erroneous narrative out there is that if a person is talking about their emotional pain, that they're an attention seeker. But what they're doing is they're struggling to find the vocabulary and they want support through it. They're actually giving you a gift when they talk about what they're going through because they're showing that they're looking for support. I tell my patients all the time, thank you for sharing the gift of your life with me. I'm not the only therapist in the city. I'm not the only therapist on the insurance panel, but you chose to give me this gift of what you're going through, and I honor that gift. And I count it a privilege to be able to share, to work with you. I let them know that they're in the driver's seat of healing. Even with all my experience, I am not the expert of them. They are the expert of them. I did not go through what they went through. They went through it. So I am here to support them, to honor their pain, and to share the gift, and to treasure the gift that they shared with me. The gift of their pain. Acknowledging how difficult it is for them to go talk to a stranger about what they've been through. In some cases, I would even apologize to the person who is suffering if I talk about an issue that is too sensitive. And I'll say, can you give me, I see that you're overwhelmed by what I said. Did I say something that is not in line with what you are going through? What am I doing when I'm doing that? I'm letting them know that it's possible for me with all these years of experience to not be totally on point when I am giving them feedback or giving support. And I find that my patients appreciate that I'm respecting and showing compassion for their pain. Another erroneous thought out there is that if they really wanted to harm themselves, then they won't talk about it. As if to say that talk is cheap. That is a real challenge when we even allow that kind of thinking pattern. Because for many who have suicidal thoughts, it's not that they want to have the suicidal thought, it's that the emotional pain is so challenging, psychologically exhausting, that they want the pain to get better and they want to find a way to stop the pain, and they're looking for an outlet. Let me stop here and say that there are many options besides suicide. But for many of you that are suffering, you haven't had the opportunity the support to be able to explore those options. Believe me, there are those options. But the fact that you don't see them yet does not mean that they do not exist. Another thing that I hear often is that the person who is going through emotional pain has no right to be that unhappy because so many good things are happening around them. Maybe they live in a nice house, or maybe they have a spouse who has a good job, or maybe they have healthy children. It's shaming the person who is suffering and making them feel guilty. We're also making the mistake of comparing people or circumstances in a superficial way. The fact that a person lives in a very nice house and they have a good job and they're gifted does not mean that they have not suffered emotional pain or that their pain is not deep. We need to be very careful about jumping to conclusions about what the person appears to be outwardly. Many people who appear strong and competent outwardly are suffering. And because we judge them to be superior or perfect, they are ashamed of talking about the pain. And unfortunately, in some cases, we only find out how depressed they are after they have committed suicide, completed suicide, or after they have attempted suicide. We want to make sure that we don't make people feel guilty. Another statement that we put out there that is erroneous is they didn't think about anybody else. That's why they did it, they're selfish. That is not the case. Many people who have suicidal thoughts, who are suffering emotionally, are worried about being a burden to their family. They don't like that they're not able to do for their family what they want to do. And they want to be a person that supports the family rather somebody that is being cared for. They do think about their loved ones. They do think about not being able to be their best. And many patients will tell me, if I was no longer here, I don't know that anybody, if I was no longer here, they wouldn't have to take care of me. Or they can then take care of themselves. The person who is suffering emotionally already has a lot of guilt and they're worried about how they're perceived. So please, let's drop that erroneous narrative. It is not true that the person who has suicidal thoughts is not thinking about others. We also want to talk about, what about those who go to church? I am one person that attends church on a regular basis, and I subscribe to the Christian faith. I'm committed to the Christian faith. I have observed many people who read the Bible, or maybe who have other religions, talk about suicide in ways that may be difficult to detect. They talk about God and what they want God to do for them, but they talk about God in a way to ask God or desire God to bring an end to their lives. It might be deceptive when you hear somebody say, I want Jesus to come soon. It might be deceptive to think that, it might be deceptive in a way, because then you might think, this person has been really religious. They want Jesus to come soon. But you gotta be careful, because that person could be suffering emotionally, or they could be thinking about suicide. It is not wrong to desire Jesus to come soon. But it would be wrong to desire Jesus to come soon and not think about taking care of things that need to be taken care of, not wanting to plan for the future, not having positive plans for the future. If that person is praying for Jesus to come soon and they're healthy, they'll be praying for things around them to improve. They'll be praying for them to be successful in their lives now as they anticipate the coming of Jesus. It is possible for a person to use religious language to talk about God and be severely depressed and to be suffering emotionally. They may come to church a lot and express a lot of tears, crying in the place of prayer. Nothing wrong with having an emotional experience, but let us watch such people because they may be using the religious experience in a way as an outlet, but it's an outlet that is unhealthy because they're thinking of leaving this world even though they're talking about God. Having religious affiliation and believing in God does not mean that you're weak if you're depressed. If you look through the Bible, many people who had a relationship with God also suffered emotionally. My goal then as a therapist when I'm working with a person from the Christian faith or any other faith is to support them in engaging their faith, to see themselves as a person that is loved by God and a person that looks to the future to leave this world in the future, not to leave this world now. And help them to see that God is engaged and connected with them in their pain. I help them to no longer use religion and their faith to keep this suicidality and suicidal thoughts covered up. We take the shame away from it and encourage them to see that God is so close to them in their pain. I want to talk to you today if you're that person who is suffering emotionally. That person that has this depth of pain that is difficult to verbalize. That person that feels tired in their body. That finds it difficult to get out of bed and do what needs to be done. That person that is suffering emotionally, that has serious difficulty with having restful sleep. You go to bed and you wake up in the middle of the night and it's just difficult to get back to bed. And every morning you're just tired. That person who is struggling with their short-term memory and forgetful, misplacing things, forgetting things on a frequent basis because of the depth of emotional pain. I want to leave these words with you because these words have helped me, even though I have not suffered from suicidal thoughts. There are many options besides suicide. And we can start from where you are now. I want to share a patient story with you. Maybe this would encourage you. I worked with a young lady in her 30s in the last year. And in the first session, I thought that it may be helpful to talk about, to help her to find words to express her emotional pain. So I introduced the feelings wheel to her, just asking her to see if she can give me labels. So give her that space to express the pain. I could see that she didn't have the vocabulary to tell me everything, but it was obvious that she had been going through pain for a long time. And as I showed her the wheel, she looked at it and she became visibly shaken and agitated and said, "This is too much, Dr. Rolla. I don't want to look at it." I was like, "That's okay. You don't have to look at it. I understand." That reaction showed me the depth of this woman's emotional pain. She had bottled it up for so long. She had attempted suicide before she started working with me. And she had kept this strong face, maintained her job in the field she worked in, paid her bills, parented her son, but the pain was there. And she could not even engage a simple tool I thought was a simple tool. It made me step back and go, "Okay now, Rolla, back off. She's in a lot of suffering." That reaction of hers helped me to refocus therapy to just giving her that space to just say what she wants to say, when she wants to say, how she wants to say, and just keep throwing at her a whole lot of empathy and compassion. Connecting with her, letting her know her thoughts are valid, everything she says is valid, because she's the one suffering. And maintaining that air of curiosity and humility. Maintaining an environment of safety, and I maintaining having that mindset of curiosity, as if I'm learning her, which is what my job is, so that she can have a space to begin to heal. After several weeks of working together, she began to label her feelings, and it was exciting for me. I didn't tell her I was that excited, but it showed me that this woman was now beginning to make progress. She's now walking towards healing and wholeness. As time went on, she started making decisions to improve her credit. She rented out a new space for her business. She started becoming much more futuristic in her outlook. And she's talked with hope about the future. You can heal. You can get better. The emotional pain that you are experiencing is valid, legitimate. There's pain you've experienced that's been stored away in your psyche that you don't even have the words to access yet. But let's start from where we are. Some of the options you can start with is sharing with somebody who deeply cares, talking to a professional, sharing with a family member that is very sensitive, talking to a spiritual advisor. You can start to take walks in your neighborhood. You can talk to your doctor about getting help with your sleep patterns. You can start working with somebody on improving your diet. So many areas that you can start to target. And in my experience, when we start working on one area, it may feel like it's a little area, it's not as connected. People then start to feel better and well enough to start to work on other areas. The progress that you make in one area gives you confidence and hope for other areas. I want you to not give up. I want you to show yourself compassion. And if it's your loved one, I want you to show your loved one compassion. Because there is a path to healing and wholeness. But we have to start from where we are and take a step forward. And as we do that, we will find hope. Now I want to share with you a question, and I would love for you to take part in this poll and share your answers. And the question is, what is one thing that helped you or someone you know in a time of deep emotional pain? Number 1, being heard without judgment. Number 2, having access to therapy or crisis support. Number 3, having faith or spiritual connection. Number 4, feeling seen by a friend or family member. Number 5, you're still learning what has helped you or someone you love. And number 6, all of the above. If you live in the United States, please call 988 for help if you're feeling suicidal. Or go to the nearest hospital next to you. If you live outside the United States, please utilize the crisis services in your city. I want you to know that it is important to connect with a mental health professional if you need it, or somebody who is trained in working with people who have emotional pain or challenges. This is just to let you know that your pain is worthy of validation and respect, and that you are a fighter to be here. And I want to encourage you to not give up the fight. Please subscribe to this channel. Connect with us on our podcast platforms. Connect with us on AskDrRolla.com. Thank you so much for watching and listening, and I will see you next time. Thank you. Bye now.